Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Aloha, everyone, and welcome to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I am your host, Janet Care Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin. And today we're going to interview very special guest, Robert-Perala. And let me tell you a little bit about Robert before we bring him on. Robert is the internationally acclaimed author of The Divine Blueprint and the newly revised edition of The Divine Architect. Excuse me. His books and life's work were inspired by an event that occurred in 1977 when he was taken aboard a spacecraft by 3 extraterrestrial astronauts. He was returned sunburned and covered in a honey oil-like substance. He is a U.S. correspondent and host of his own internet TV show, The Perala Report, and has been featured on CNN, the Fox Network, Showtime, and Coast to Coast AM, to name a few. His websites are theperalaReport.com and robertperala.com. Now, a little bit more about him. His lectures and publications include 25 years of research in metaphysics, spirituality, behavioral science, personal growth, the origin of the soul, earth-based anomalies, extraterrestrial science, and near-death experience research. He is a humanitarian, and his efforts as the Director of Development for the United Nations Association led to him being awarded the prestigious Certificate of Congressional Recognition at Stanford University in 2007 for support of programs with Adopt-A Minefield and UNICEF. He's a graduate of the Robbins Research Institute, led by America's foremost results coach, Tony Robbins. And there's more. He has produced and performed on almost every kind of show, including lectures, workshops, expos, conferences, music, and film productions. There goes my voice. He recently filmed and recorded Whatever Happened to the American Dream for the motion picture documentary soundtrack Just Signed Here. He's a very talented man. He's got a long bio on our website, aquarianradio.com. And next up, or he probably says dozen things between now and then, but the first weekend of June, he is one of your MCs for Contact in the Desert, a huge conference in Joshua Tree, the first weekend in June. Dr. Lessin, what would you like to say before we bring on Robert?
Well, it's perfectly obvious to us. We've interviewed so many people that have been chosen, as has Robert, to be ambassadors of the extraterrestrials who mean us well and who have the means to help us be well. And Robert is one of these special ambassadors, and we're really glad to have him here because he's got some wisdom for us as individuals and for the planet. And I hope that he'll even give us a little hint on how each of us out there in Radio Land can get in touch with divinity.
And welcome to the show. Robert, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Good evening, and it's great to see you guys. Hey there. Both
hey
doctors?
There. No. Well, I went the Celtic route of being the goddess, and my husband went the, the traditional academic route at UCLA. But I see that you went to UCLA as well, right? Did I see that right?
What, me?
No, that was somebody else.
No, they wouldn't have me. I went to the School of Hard Knocks, I mean, I stayed back in the first grade. I got notes from my teachers that said, are you still here? And, things like that. I was more distracted by what was kind of going on all around us and when I was very young and didn't do all that well in school. But yeah, all the education sort of stuff came later, and that's all after paying attention to what makes up the material plane and the crazy and fun people that make up our progression here,
Right. Well, we have to look at education and learning a different way because there's so many of us that are brilliant, like yourself, and I'm probably pretty smart too, and we didn't go the traditional route, and so just to give credit for all the PhDs pile high and deeper, I make fun of my husband all the time. But he's brilliant. He's brilliant. But you're brilliant, and we all have our own genius, and we all contribute. And I really appreciate it. I'm reading your bio. It's like amazing what you've accomplished. I didn't know all this about you.
You know, when I hear that, it's so long. I didn't realize. Maybe that's on my website. It's so long. I feel like it makes me 147 at this point.
Well, maybe you had simultaneous lifetimes.
What's that?
Maybe you had simultaneous lifetimes. That's why you've accomplished so much. You're actually pulling all your simultaneous lifetimes into one lifetime here.
Yeah, I think so.
Because read it. Read it over. It's amazing all that you've done.
It's inevitable that whatever you put your focus on will interact with the other things that are in you, and you get some unique combinations. And so being diverse ultimately gives you a way bigger picture, I think.
Yeah, I think it's getting the most out of life. I think we all start out in one phase, and like they say, like Carl Jung said, the first phase is the I am phase, and this is identifying. We're just such a toddler, and we're getting used to just what's around us. I am this. These are my parents. This is my room. These are my things. This is my language, etc. And the next phase is I can't remember the word, but it's sort of the building phase. I must have a family. I must reproduce. I must create a foundation for myself, for my dreams and goals and aspirations. And the third phase is sort of the phase that I'm in now, and probably you are now, or you are obviously too, and a lot of us are entering into, and that phase is called How May I Serve? And that phase is really where we sort of we've already amassed the knowledge on all these various levels, and now if we're awake to what we're really here for, we realize that we are here all as sort of ambassadors to a large degree. We're all here as way showers of spiritual principle, sort of correct thinking, healing modalities. How might we mold, shape, and shift those efforts, that we have, and also impart those to others. So that's where we're at now, and that's where you guys are at with Revolution Radio. It's a privilege to be on such a show.
Oh, well, thank you. So you are an experiencer, and I'd like to talk to you about your 1977. How old were you in 77? Were you a child, or were you full grown?
Yeah, I was 22 that year. That's what my things were way back. It was a great time,
Oh, I love the 70s and 60s.
Oh, I do too. We were so innocent and so lovely then, and
I know.
But every generation has its opposing force. But for me, people first know they come to the lectures because they want to hear what happened, and that's usually how I start out. I don't consider myself the finest researcher out there, like the Richard Dolans or the David Wilcox or the David Ikes and these kind of guys. I consider myself somebody who had an extraordinary experience, and then later sort of moved on into more the personal sciences, applications of how we exist and coexist together, and I'm more of a motivational styled speaker. Just to answer your question, I definitely believe that thoughts are real things, and when I was a kid, one of the big epiphanies of my life when I was 12 years old was when the Beatles in 1967 went to see Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Do you remember when they went to Rishikesh that summer?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So this period is a very important period that needs to be mentioned because there was sort of an explosion of consciousness happening. We were just starting to realize, okay, the bigger picture here and cosmic consciousness and all this. And one of the things that John Lennon said, that when he got back, they said, well, what did you learn with Maharishi? And why were you in Rishikesh, which is in the Himalayas? And he said, we learned that thoughts were things and that they had the ability to travel. And that if you sent a thought from in the universe, someone or something could even hear that and might even respond to it. And I was hooked, And 10 years later, I thought, well, okay, that's it. And 10 years later, I was in the Lake Tahoe Mountains, and I was meditating, and I was just sort of sending out a simple thought form. Hey, I'm here, looking at the vast crystalline blue sky. It was December 26th, the day after Christmas, and the presents were put away, and my family was just getting ready to sort of, retire for the evening, and some of the others had left, and, everything was quiet, and I lit a candle outside by myself late at night, and just sort of did this prayer and didn't really think about anything. I didn't have the really understanding of extraterrestrials or anything like that. I didn't know enough to ask for that. I just thought if there's anything out there, I would really like to meet up with it in some, somehow, some way. And so I didn't really expect anything to sort of happen. It was far beyond me. It was just a very simple sort of, mantra almost, of request. And that night, in the middle of the night, about 2:30 in the morning, suddenly the ceiling opened up somehow, and there was this fantastic storm in the around the whole room. The whole room became charged in lightning and flashing colors of blue, violet, green, and indigo, and silver, and became very, very bright. And all of a sudden, down came what looked like 3 astronauts. I know that sounds crazy, but you've probably heard crazier on your show. So,
oh yes,
So they come down. Yeah, they come down, and I started to scream. And just as I started to scream, I was suddenly placed in this blue bubble, and I was frozen. I couldn't move at all, and I was just like encased in like a blue light of some kind. And suddenly I was floating above my bed, and I was in this blue bubble, and I couldn't move anything. And all I could hear were my thoughts sort of screaming inside and looking around with my eyes, but my arms and legs and everything couldn't move. And suddenly the side of the house dropped away. And I remember seeing this sort of tunnel. This tunnel was there of swirling light. Incredible. If you if you see the movie Contact, it's a wonderful there's a wonderful reproduction of what a wormhole looks like. That's very close to what one looks like if you were to witness one. And I went through it at incredible speed, and I'd love to say the experience was very lovely, and I saw the light, and then tell you another kind of story like a lot of people do in near-death experience studies, but that's not this story.
Okay.
That's not this story.
It was a wormhole, and you do near-death research. Maybe they're going through a wormhole, same thing. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, in this story, which is a true story, in this story, the wormhole is very, very painful. I mean, it was like my body was on fire. Oh, geez, it was awful. And suddenly I went through it. I noticed that when I surrendered to it and realized that I started to think I'm dying, I'm on fire, and that somehow I'm dying, if I just surrendered to it, I allowed myself to die, that it would sort of let go of you a little bit. It would let go. And so I surrendered to death, actually, because I thought, I don't think I could take that kind of fire like that. And then suddenly it would let go, and I was still traveling. And then I just tried to keep my mind still, and whatever this was, try to hold on and try to, get through this somehow and not think, just be nothing. Maybe it'll go away, And then suddenly I'm in this room in a sphere of some kind, and I'm faced with this like glass giant obelisk-like object. And whatever this thing is doing something to me. I don't really know. I can't really say what it was. There was nobody on the other side to greet me. There was no form of any kind. There were no angels or little gray men or, men in white coats or anything. There was nothing waiting for me. And so then I went back through the tunnel. It was very painful again. And suddenly, to shorten the story here, and I was floating in the air, horizontal, in this blue bubble, and then suddenly the blue bubble lowered itself down on the bed. There was this gigantic storm going on, all this horrendous light and flashes of lightning that came off these suits. Now, these entities, whatever they were, they wore like silver spacesuits. The suits themselves even seemed to be alive somehow. They had visors. I saw no faces, and they had like an orange antenna on the top of their spacesuit. And so then suddenly, without any warning, the thing they let go of me, and then suddenly the whole ceiling closed up and the side of the house closed up, and everything was completely quiet, and it was over.
Wow.
And I lied there, not knowing, having an absolute clue, what happened, and I threw up over the side of the bed, and eventually crawled across the floor this probably might be an hour and a half later, pulled myself up on the vanity mirror in the bathroom, and turned on the light to realize that I was sunburned from head to toe, and I was soaked in like a honey material all over me. And I was in a state of shock. I really had no idea what had happened. I didn't say, this is some kind of close encounter. That wouldn't be recovered for really another 2 months until it was over, And so anyway, that's the short end of it. And then I came back to Los Gatos, which I happened to move into an apartment the week before, and it was the first time I was living alone. I had my parents and roommates for 1 year, and now suddenly I was due to come back to this apartment and live alone for the first time. But I didn't plan on having something like this happen, over the holiday while I was gone and then come back and live alone. Now I have to come back home, and I got back home and I closed the door and I stayed in my apartment for about 3 months. I went to work after about a week and a half. I didn't tell anybody what happened because I didn't know what it was.
Wow.
So I just kept my mouth shut. And then there was a whole series of events after that I led myself to various people who could. I started to get the idea later on this might have something to do with some sort of astronauts from another dimension, and that's what led me. I'm 60 years old now. That's what led me to being at the very first UFO conference of its kind that was held in April of 1978 at the San Francisco Airport Hilton, where I met J. Allen Hynek, founder of Project Blue Book, the guy who started the whole thing of testimonies being given of people that claimed they'd been aboard a craft. There was a very young Richard Hoagland. Nobody knew who he was, really.
Oh, my goodness.
There was a very young Stanton Friedman. Nobody really knew who he was. He was just sort of becoming the name. Jacques Vallée was there that day. I was there that day, and William Shatner was there that day. And there was only about probably 24 of us there. And that was it.
Goodness.
That's the first one. So I actually consider myself like the oldest in the business, but still only 60 years old, because I started at 22 with these guys that are all now household names.
Oh, wow. Well, let me interject on that. I went in 1975, I think it was, to New York, and J. Allen Hynek was there with Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, and all the Star Trek people at the Star Trek conferences, and there were 20,000 people there.
Wow.
So, right. So we were kind of doing it through Star Trek, and we were incorporating, J. Allen Hynek and going, well, how is this going to ever become real? Because that's, we believed it. We believed this is our future, what was being presented, which is actually 50 years ago. 20,000 people were there in New York City. They had a giant hotel. They had to turn away people. Somebody got some bootleg tickets. But I said, well, there's a lot of people, and I Googled it, and someone said, one of the reports said, I thought there was, maybe 5,000 people there. They said, no, there's 20,000 people through the doors. I think it was 4 or 5 days long. And, but that was the baby boomers. I'm 62. And we were just so stoked to bring about this new reality. We were heading to a different future than the one we're in right now. We got hijacked somewhere along the line, but we're taking it back. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I didn't know that those kind of conventions were even that big then. I know they're huge today, but 20,000 in 1975 would have been phenomenal.
It was so new and exciting, and I think that was the year we brought back the movies. They had canceled Star Trek in '69, and so it's like, give us back our Star Trek. So we got they announced, it was I went 2 years in a row, so I forget which one it was, but they announced that they were going to start the movies up again. So that was just
wow.
And I was just a pop. I was I was very young. I was in my early 20s.
Yeah, sure. Wow. Fantastic.
So, but it's exciting. You were there when these people were all, young and wet behind their ears and just learning about this stuff. And there was a television show called Project Blue Book, but I don't know when that.
Yeah, that was on Sunday nights. And Close Encounters of the Third Kind with Richard Dreyfuss, produced and directed by Steven Spielberg, was out at the time. And oddly enough, later on when I saw this film, and I saw Richard Dreyfuss had gotten burned by this craft. Remember when he's there at the railroad tracks? The same scene where he's at the railroad tracks and everything, and he pokes half of his face out from underneath the cab of the truck to see what this bright object is above him, and that's the half that got sunburned. And I looked at that and I said, wait a minute, that happened to me. And I started to get the idea, wait a minute here, this is, holy cow. I started thinking, I have some kind of real happening here. And I met, a very unusual thing happened after that. I met Clarissa Bernhardt. Do you know who she is?
No, refresh my memory.
Okay,
the name sounds very right. Okay.
There was a book at the time, I still have it, it's right here in my book cabinet, called Alien Meetings by Brad Steiger.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was reading this book and thinking, well, maybe this has something to do with extraterrestrials. And so I bought the book. I came across her chapter, and I find out this lady is living at 444 Saratoga Avenue. In San Jose. And incredibly, I read this story of her contact with what she called the Space Brothers, that were like these 8-foot-tall silver cosmonauts of some kind, astronauts, with an orange antenna and visors. And I looked at that, and it described it exactly as I saw it. And I thought, somebody else knows about this. So I called her up the next day, and her husband had answered. And I got in this long conversation about what happened. And he said, can you come and see my wife tomorrow? There's no charge for this, but we don't have anybody that calls up that they want to do a reading with her, but they don't say this kind of experience with these kind of entities. I think she'd really want to meet you. So I went the next day, and I went to meet her. And I brought my little trusty cassette recorder. Remember the little ones we used to have with you put the cassette in and close down the little plastic window and press play and record, right?
I remember.
Sony.
Yeah, exactly. And I checked the batteries. I brought the cord. I thought, I got to get this on tape. Something's going on here. I'm thinking now that maybe this is something way different than I thought I'd got myself involved in. And I went and saw her, and the first thing she said was, well, listen, your tape recorder's not going to work here. And I said, well, excuse me, I had fresh batteries and everything, and I pressed play and record, and the recorder wouldn't work. It's weird. I thought, that's strange. And I plugged it in the wall, and it wouldn't work. And she said, it's not going to work here. And I thought, wait a minute, how can you know this? And she said, well, because I already know, because, you see, I can see them. They come in and out. I said, they come in and out? What do you mean they come in and out? She says, well, they come in and out, and I have contact with them, and they've contacted you. And let me describe this. Let's see here. You might have seen 3 of them. I said, yeah, that's right. And she said, did you see them very tall? They have orange antennas and visors. I said, yes. Does it look like lightning happening in the room? Yes. I said, did the house kind of drop away somehow, and then suddenly you went into a tunnel? And I'm like, who are you? What's happening here? What is this? How would you know that? Yeah, that's right. That's all. That's everything that happened. She said, well, they know you. And this is for your ears only. And later on you'll understand this, but not for now. We don't really want this on record for now. And that's when she said, they're related to you. Oh. And you can't imagine, when you tell a 22-year-old that, excuse me? They're related to me?
Yes.
I'm like, no, this is getting to be way too wild. I got a sunburn, I got honey all over me, and now these things, silver robots of some kind, are related to me. You can't imagine how my mind was spinning if you didn't have any other information about this kind of thing. You know, what that does to a kid. I'm like, don't do this to people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's how I learned that they were here and they were related to us, and it was okay. And they're coming from, you know, what would be considered our future in many ways.
Oh.
That doesn't mean that they don't come from our past, because time and space is sort of stretches. I love Bette Eadie's testimony in Embraced by the Light. She said when dying, she realized that life stretched backwards and forwards in ways we'd never even dreamed possible. And I go on that premise that that's not necessarily in the future or in the past. There's more to it. And so I listened to her, and I was stunned, completely stunned at what I was hearing. And so, interestingly enough, the reason that there's a photo that actually exists that people come to my lectures, they always see it. You have to play, you know, your hits of where you come from and you know how you got to this place before you get into the other parts of your work. And I looked in a UFO magazine. I think it was the April issue, and there in a poster was a photograph of one of these taken by Jeff Grinshaw in Falkville, Alabama in 1973.
Oh, and I see it's on, I put it on Aquarian Radio. You said the extraterrestrials are here, and it's like a silver, okay, I'm going to try to make that larger so I can look
exactly, yeah. Now you see it there. It's on my website. You can put it up on yours if you like. And,
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and so that guy got a crude photograph of it. Now, you don't see the incredible lightning. You don't see the suit all lit up. You don't see the orange antenna. You see a little dot at the top above his helmet that's just what faintly the camera caught, and that actually was part of the antenna. You know, and so you only see this sort of crude, like, foil, like spaceman, but that's what it was. You know, put all the color in there and put all the light in there, and that's definitely what it was. And I was astonished that there was somebody that actually had a photograph. And there was 2 or 3 versions of it. There's an apparition-like version of it. There's a single version of it, and then there's one that's 3. And he just snapped. And the apparition version of it is where they must have been sort of disappearing from this reality somehow. So whatever these were, they had the ability to disappear and appear at will somehow. You know? And
so
that's how I got in it.
Did it leave any marks in your house?
No, not a thing.
Nothing. Okay.
You know, other than me upchucking over the side of the bed, there was nothing else. And I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't think anybody would even understand it, and I didn't even understand it. You know, and when I got to the convention, I thought, well, let's go to J.L. and Hynek. I mean, this is the go-to guy. You know, this is the go-to guy. You know, this is the guy that people go to. He's in town. I'll drive up. I live an hour south of San Francisco. I'll go up there and I'll meet this guy. And so I brought this friend of mine, Dan, with me, and we went in. I wanted to meet him. I didn't know any of these other people. I sat down with him. I said, I want to tell you my story. And he had a little cassette recorder that was part of Project Blue Book. And he turned on the recorder, and he said, tell me your name, your age. Okay, good. Tell me what happened. Okay, I started to tell him what happened. There's this guy next to me on my left. I'm so absorbed in trying to get my point across to J.L. and Heineken. I'm excited to sit in front of a real professor. For a guy who cut school as long as I did and avoided my teachers, now I can't wait to meet one of these guys. And he's a professor. He's the real thing. He's a doctor, you know. And I mean, to find out, you know. So I'm just going at him like crazy with what happened. And then I hear this guy on the side of me going, well, tell us what else happened. Okay. So I turn my attention back to Jail and Hynek, and this guy keeps bugging me on the side, what else? And I'm so busy on Hynek. Finally, I turned around to say, excuse me, I'm speaking with Dr. Hynek here. I turned around, and all of a sudden, it's William Shatner.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that.
You can't imagine the look on probably my face when I see
You're telling
that
William Shatner to shut up.
I'm telling, yeah, exactly. That's the story. Yeah, exactly. I'll always be. So when he finally got up, I was so busy telling Dan, because Dan kept telling me, do you realize, man, when you tell your story and you're public, and it just goes into the newspapers, you'll be able to say the first time you told your story was to Captain freaking Kirk. And all of a sudden I hear, excuse me, and I said, yes, sir? And I look up at William, and he goes, yeah, will you shut up, please? And that's a true story. That's how it started out the first day. Goodness. I came out of the closet. My first day was William Shatner telling me to shut up. So my life is a series of synchronicities and humorous moments, like should have never happened, right?
That's very similar to what you described when a UFO flies between an airfield and a regular plane above it that's taking the photograph. It wavers and then it's gone as it goes through the wormhole. It's exactly what you described, only that's at a much larger scale.
Yeah. Well, now, now we know so much more, and we have you guys being able to put together a great radio show that brings people out, that gets people. I think the nice thing about your show is that you get people used to the idea, because at first, the idea that we're not alone, and this isn't these things that we're seeing in the sky is not a predecessor to an invasion. This is just getting you used to the idea, and this is a spiritual quest that we're talking about. This is an understanding that there is a spiritual hierarchy that is in several layers nestled into this plane.
Very spiritual. I'm glad you mentioned that. It is extremely, for me, I'm a lifelong experiencer. And, when you get underneath all these researchers, most of them have had some kind of experience that launched them on this path. So you went to this conference and then you got involved. You'll have to tell us the rest of your story. So after this first conference with Hynek and Shatner, what did you do next with this information?
You assume it's divine plan. It may seem like random events and synchronicities. There's a plan in the universe. Yeah,
you were chosen. You were chosen to start this process along with a lot of other people. But so what did you do after with all that information?
Yeah. At first, the whole first half of the story after this traumatic happening, it was very upsetting, actually. Turns very humorous afterwards. And then comes the point where I thought, okay, now it's time to kind of come out and tell my parents. And my mom was into metaphysics. She had even held seances in the 60s, the mid-60s,
wow.
And 65, 66, 67, when it was really taboo. And these ladies would get together, and my dad would moan and go out and play golf, and he would oh, my God, here they come again. They're going to try and raise the dead in our living room. Oh, great.
Great.
And so you have to remember that this would be now February 27th of 1978. So it's exactly 2 months to the day that I decided to go tell my parents what had happened. I went up there on this mission to their house in Saratoga, saying, tonight, I'm telling them at dinner, I'm telling them what's happening, and that I've had some kind of contact, I guess, and so I said, well, Mom, Dad, I said, something's really happened to me, and it's something that's big, and it changes you, and I know now that I'm not exactly what I thought I was and everything. And I just wanted to say that it's time that I come out and I just tell you. And so I said, and my dad intervened a little bit. He said, you're not going to tell us that you're, I said, I've been abducted by extraterrestrials. And he said, oh, thank God. He said, I thought you were going to tell us you were gay. Gay? Gay? What does that have to do with anything? I said, no, I've had contact with extraterrestrials. He goes, oh, well, I could take that a lot easier. Because at that time, you know, for him, he was from World War II, you know. I mean, we love gay people, you know. But in those days, it was like he was afraid his son was going to come out and tell him something completely different. And he said, well, I can live with that story and everything. And my mother was crying. And I said, why are you crying? And she said, we're going to be rich. We're going to be rich. You're going to write a book. And I thought, what? A book? I said, I'm not here to write any books. I'm not writing any book on this experience, man. What do you what do you want me to get hate mail all day long and get names like weirdo and you know and all that? This isn't about a book. This is about something that happened to me the night we were in Lake Tahoe and everything. And then she settled down and she said, "Tell me all about it." And everything. And my dad just sat there looking with his arms crossed across the table going, "Yeah, I'm dying to hear this. Go ahead, tell us, Junior." So space people, huh? You know, you can't even show up for work on time. And you think the space people are going to come here and contact you, huh? Is that what this is? This is right out of a movie script, you know?
Oh, my goodness. You do have to write this book.
Yeah, you know? And I did. In fact, I did with Divine Blueprint, and then Divine Architect touched on it again. And now we have a revised edition of the Divine Architect coming out where there's an expanded version of the full version of what this was. I think when I wrote Divine Blueprint years ago, I think I went through it and didn't go into great detail about it because I think I was more interested in writing a book that was a variety show on several different subjects. And now I think it would be important to go back and let's tell the story, the full story the way, you know, it was, and not be afraid of the humorous kind of parts to it, because I think the universe has a great sense of humor. And then it later led me to, behavioral science and the study of human thought and emotional mastery and relationship mastery and the origin of the soul and the purpose of living and directives and everything. And then, and then to things like helping other people, like going to contact in the desert and create an experience for them, for those that come out and MC and unite people to say, yeah, we're a family and we're the people you go to for your, extra exciting life. You know?
Well, it's interesting. Every time you retell the story, you get more information. It's like little parts of your brain open up and you remember more and more. So it's, important to revisit that, especially with your hands on a keyboard, on a computer.
Yeah.
And just allow it to come through. I do that with my story, and then I just, all this stuff comes out, and then I look at it and go, wow, look at the detail I get.
I find it very interesting to, when you revisit the detail, for you to identify with the background objects in the experience and give them a voice. So what does the examining table say? Things open up and more memories are encoded within your pictorial or ideological memory of what it is. You can keep opening up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing that a lot of it stays with you. Something very traumatic like that's something you just don't forget necessarily. I mean, I know some people, their memories are erased and everything. I'm sure that there's a lot more to that whole meeting, than I thought. I mean, I remember also I thought, well, I've got to go tell somebody. So before I told really anybody, there's a subtext to this story, and I went to the nearest church. There happened to be a little tiny church right around the corner from the house. I thought, well, you know what? Maybe I'll just go ask the guy in there if he knows about any of these things, because the Bible. I didn't know what to make of the Bible at that time, and I thought, well, if they're going to talk about all these things like where you go when you die, maybe they'll be able to tell me where they come when they, come from come from the stars. And I told this guy my story, and he was very conservative, and he said, "Tell me, my brother," that type of thing, And I kind of felt like, oh, Jesus, that's so culty, kind of. Tell me, my brother, and everything, like, you guys are into Jehovah's Witnesses. Which one are you? And so I drew this outline of the spaceman for him and described the lightning and described going through the heat and intensity of the experience. And And then he looked at me and he said, "This is what you saw?" And I said, "Yes, sir, that's what I saw." And immediately he and two ladies threw me to the ground. I wasn't prepared for that. I was suddenly, I was suddenly, face down on my stomach with my head being pushed to the side. And they were trying to cast out a demon out of me.
Oh,
and there was a woman, there was a woman lying on the ground also, and she was speaking in something that sounded like Swedish or something, in a weird language with her eyes all rolled up, and she was on the floor too. And suddenly they're praying for this silver thing to come out of me in the name of Jesus Christ, this devil to come out of me. And everything, like it was inside me somehow. And I suddenly thought, I jumped up, broke away from their grip and everything. And I looked at him and I said, "I don't think you should be praying for me. I think you should be praying for her. That's not even English." And I didn't know what tongues was. I didn't know this lady speaking in tongues. Right? And I ran out of that little church. It was a little tiny place. Ran out, and as I ran past the sign, I went to look. I saw the sign for what is this place I just went into? I don't think I even looked at it when I went in, and it said, Los Gatos, the Church of the Holy Rollers. The Church of the Holy Rollers. Later I asked my friends, "Who are these people?" And he said, "Oh man, you went into a conservative section there, brother. Where they come, everybody goes to hell." I mean,
you have
you
to
better
write the screenplay. This is a comedy.
Exactly.
They did holy roller you. That's amazing. So this is actually brilliant. I mean, if this is kind of what happens to experiencers when they come out, and now if people are like, "Oh, good, I'm glad you're gay." They don't want to hear about it. It's a reversal now because there's, it's a different world. So
it's a different world.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you didn't get a real good response from your parents, although that was within the range. Some people, will excommunicate you and send them from their, I've lost friends and family when I came out. I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Oh, really?
So what? Oh, yeah. I got
wow.
ridiculed.
Well, you trailblazer there. You trailblazer there, Janet. There you go. You're going off again and, going to enlighten others.
You learn to shut up. You learn to shut up. Like, nope, not going to do that. You got rolled. Your parents rolled.
The more you think you're just talking about only you, the more you're touching on the universal.
Yeah.
What?
So, say that again, honey?
Well, Carl Rogers used to say sometimes when I think I'm only talking about me, Carl Rogers, and only me. What I say is universal, and everybody says that's true of me too. And so when you and Janet reach this level of candor, people looking inside realize I've had experiences like that too.
Well, that wasn't my experience. Did you go out and find other experiencers? Or how long did it take you before you finally got somebody receptive to hear your story?
Oh, it didn't take long. I met a woman up in San Leandro who I was sent up to, who had a son who was a seer, and that kind of ended up being with like a private organization and a group that was into all the old esoteric sciences like Alice Bailey, cosmic fire, a lot of the deeper esoteric, complicated stuff, that the type of stuff that the Hertaks are into,
right.
All what happened in Egypt, the doorways of perception. There weren't that many books that I remember being around at that time. I think when you guys and I were in that period, there was like Strangers Among Us by Ruth Montgomery.
Right. Ruth Montgomery was huge. Yes, I loved.
Yeah, she was the lady of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then later
there was
on,
Bud Hopkins a little bit.
Bud Hopkins.
Came around.
Yeah.
There, you could go into a bookstore and there was like one little like teeny part of a shelf which had about maybe 10, 20 books and metaphysical stuff. And now you can go to metaphysical stores.
Yeah, sure.
But that was it. I was like, oh, isn't there any more?
That was it. We were alone with it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and it was certainly made fun of and everything. I was in that group for a number of years, and I tried to find my way through it, but it was fraught with problems and issues, and at the end of the day, probably was a glorified cult. And then I kind of went on to become a businessman, and I got very involved. You know, I was very involved always with my dad's business, and I sort of lived down here for a long time and concentrated on sales, and I was selling hundreds of thousands of sunglasses for years. And that was a business my parents owned. My parents owned a very successful. They were pioneers in that business. So I grew up with the people like the Ray-Ban family and people from Bosch and Lohm and from you know, all the different you know, Foster Grant and all that. And I knew all those families, and I became a businessman. But in 1992, I started hanging out with Sheldon Neidl, and I had I had a group called the UFO Town Meeting, and he came in and spoke. We became good friends. David Icke came in '93. Nobody knew who he was. We put him on for $5 at the door and hoping we were going to have 25 people and everything. And so David and I go way back to those days. And now I'm the U.S. coordinator for his tour, for his the Worldwide Wake Up Tour, which is going to 15 cities throughout the world. He's going to Prague, Russia, Amsterdam, Paris, New York, 5 dates in Australia, San Francisco, Los Angeles. He's going to Italy. So I'm just doing the U.S. leg of his tour as a coordinator, helping coordinate the ad campaign for his U.S. dates, which is only the 3, one in New York, L.A., and then San Francisco. And you can see that at the Worldwide Wake Up.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I have had both of those people in my living room.
Yeah, so, great, huh? Wow,
yeah,
when did
Sheldon
you have David?
Well,
really?
Yeah, Sheldon moved to Maui, so we used to always go to his events, and I invited up for dinner. And what was his wife's name? She's Connie or something?
Yeah, is that Miriam? Oh no, Colleen. Colleen.
Yeah, I love Colleen. Yeah. So we kept talking for a while after they moved, and then David's been here twice to Maui, and the first time he and Pamela wanted to kind of hide away, and so we let them hide here. He was here for about a month. I had a guest room. Yeah, we gave him a couple of contra classes for the relationship, but they didn't end up lasting. But you know, we were just doing what we could to help them work out some things. And so it was great. We get to hang out with them and take them to Little Beach and show them all the sights here in Maui. Little Beach is the nude beach, so it was like, what do you think of this? Anyway.
Yeah, well, he liberal thinker he is. You know, he probably thought this will do just fine.
Oh, he just sat up on the hillside, and then every once in a while someone would come and say, "Oh, aren't you David Icke?" Oh,
in his next book, he had a picture of himself nude. He said, "So what's the big deal?"
What's that?
Yeah,
that's right, on the cover of the book. What's the big deal with nudity? Yeah, so he's cool. So you're doing his tour. I'm so glad he's out touring again. And he starts this summer?
Yeah, he starts off in Australia next month in June, and you know, he's doing one date at the Medina Theater, I think, and that's the weekend we're at Contact in the Desert. So then he goes in the big. So then June is all about Australia, and then you know, then he'll do some other dates, and then he comes to the United States. He's in Los Angeles on the 10th of September. No, New York on the 10th of September. He is in Los Angeles on the 17th, the following Saturday. And then the following Saturday, on the 24th, he's here in San Francisco, actually in Richmond, which is across the bay, at the Craneway Pavilion.
Wow.
So, you know, you can see it at davidicke.com and go check it out, and I'm going to see you there.
Excellent, excellent. That's great.
Yeah.
So we're going to go back to your story. And we got about 5 minutes before the break, I think. Yeah, 56. Okay, so we're up into, where did we end up? Like 78.
Yeah. Or we could jump to Pleiadians. I got real excited.
Okay.
Seeing that.
Well, let's. We only have like 5 minutes. Let's finish this sequence, and then after the break, there's a little couple-minute break. We'll go into. You have wonderful questions here. I don't think we're going to get to everything. We'll have to have you back again sometime, but we'll get. This is a fascinating story. So, what happens next? So you've got this story, this thing that happened. Did you ever get like hypnotized to get more details? Did you have any more visitations? What happened to you?
Yes. Well, the visitations have been all throughout my life. Now, this particular thing that we're talking about now is that's the main one because that it's so pronounced and so almost violent, really. I mean, it was so interrupting. It's just like, after that was over, my old life was over, and then I'm beginning a different styled life. But you have to remember that when I was a boy, I saw apparitions, and I was recorded down in Los Angeles, in San Diego, actually in La Jolla, by the Reverend John Roger Hinkins and people like this that wanted to hear what it was I was seeing, because for some reason I saw apparitions. These are men and women like you and I who've benefited from greater time and greater knowledge, and they've lived here on the earth just like we do. And then when they're done, they discard their bodies and they become discarnates, and they're just who they are, and they come in many forms. The whole atmosphere is filled with your committee that's walking with you, and that rotates, and then it's filled with discarnates, lost loved ones that have known you before you were born and while you're here, and they will be there when you finish, your life. They'll be there. And then there's, a whole bunch of others. What I saw were men and women who, and children that would be talking amongst each other, wouldn't necessarily be talking at me, whatever. I would wake up in the middle of the night and see my room was filled with people, and I would always tell my mom that we had people in the room at night. Now, later, fast forward, when we got into the first book in 1998, the movie The Sixth Sense was out, and you remember it was about the little boy who sees dead people and all that. Well,
that's you.
And I'd seen, that all my life. And so one day, I think in the first ad, there was a magazine that was very popular. You could get in it and get booked for radio and television. It was called Radio and TV Report. And if you put your bio in there, radio people are looking for subject matters and people to put on their show and to have topical discussion and this kind of stuff. And so I think the second time around, we said, why don't we put in the thing about the movie and tie in the movie a little bit? And, something about, you've seen the movie The Sixth Sense, now meet the real thing. Wow. My phone didn't stop ringing for a few months, and I did some crazy number of radio shows. In 2 years, I did probably 150 to 180 radio shows, and I was very busy during the movie when the movie was out. And this is all before the internet and all that. The internet was just sort of coming around, with an idea about that time. I mean, the computer was here, but not the internet quite. In 1998, it was extremely primitive compared to.
I remember.
What we see today, or what sees us today. Are we watching it, or are they watching us?
All of the above. Well, yeah. I'm the female version of the Sixth Sense little boy, so we have a lot to share. Because same thing. They were always there, and nobody else could see them, but there they were. And I used to invite friends to come stay over, and sometimes if they were coming around when I was there, then they could see the ghost too. Did you ever have that happen? If you had a friend stay over, they might see the ghost too?
I don't remember. I think a couple of my mates once said there were some weird things going on here at the house. I know that when I lived in my townhouse, people would come and stay at my house, and I know Tricia McCannon would come there and everything. She's like my sister and everything. And she would come to the house and make jokes like if the furniture was moving it by itself, you were probably at Robert-Perala's house.
Oh, wow. Well, we have to pause right now. The music's coming in. We'll be back in 3 minutes. See you after the break.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Tune in Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern on Studio A to hear Tammy Adams share her knowledge of an unknown realm on Talking with Your Angels. Join Tammy as she uncovers hidden secrets about the spiritual world of angels, ghosts, and other entities that have been with us longer than we know. Tammy is a psychic, a teacher, spiritual coach, a leader in her field, and will be sharing her information and stories with you. So join us on Tuesdays at noon on Studio A. With Tammy's guidance, you'll find out who has been watching over you from the other side, and soon you will be talking with your angels.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio with Janet Kerr Lesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson and our guest Robert-Perala. Before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to the donation button on freedomslips.com and donate what you can. $1, $5, $15, $20, whatever you can donate is greatly appreciated, and we do thank you very much for your donation. Dr. Lesson, Sasha, what would you like to say?
We're going on with the Robert-Perala story, and we're getting to the point where many of you out there may have had the same experience. You see discarnates, and other people, you may or may not share that, but the time has come for you to come out, just the way Robert and Janet are doing.
Mm-hmm. So, take it away. Where were we? We were talking about, so you saw all these ghosts. And
people called on you because you're an apparition seer.
Apparitions and discarnates. Yeah. Did they talk to you directly? Were they just there and you saw them? Did you have any other type of interactions with them?
Only on some occasions. They come in different ways, different forms. Sometimes they would impart things to me that were more of not necessarily speaking to me, but like almost like a picture was put in my head, a different way of speaking to you, an idea, not necessarily an idea, but an image that presents the idea. And
what kind of content?
What's that?
What kind of content were the images?
Yeah, what were the ideas?
The content would be about a progression, moving one forward. There would be something of the nature of something that would prod me to look deeper into the personal growth and healing aspect of my own life. Mm-hmm. There's things that need to get out of the way first, before you can go on and go administer, concepts and idea. And one of the main things that kept coming to me was the flashing of like the virtues sign. The virtues are really largely the prerequisite of why we are here. Earth people are born into the material plane because they are here to learn how to just do some really basic things, really. We're here to learn to tell the truth. Can you tell the truth? and just be accurate in that without adding so much to it or completely falsifying the existing state around you. We do that to survive. We do that to impress, and the egoic body gets involved. And yes, a lot of bravado, and I'm a victim of that, or I should say, an instigator, a culprit of that too, and everything. But we're here to practice tolerance and selflessness and compassion and unconditional love, largely forgiveness. We're a primitive race. We don't have contact with many. That's my cat. Daddy's doing a radio. Daddy's doing a radio show right now. Can you help me out? Help me out here. You know, I know the cat wants to tell his version of it. Thank you very much for sharing. You stay in there and share amongst yourself. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, and so largely I got the idea that really at the end of the day, what is it that you really take with you? What does the purpose-driven life look like? And so I started meeting great teachers. I saw Sheldon Neidl, you know, who's actually pretty much the real thing on many levels. A quick story that I think is extraordinary about Sheldon is that one night I hosted a radio or a rather TV show in a local station here and in Mountain View. And one night he comes in and he says, okay, now this is what I want to do for this show. Okay, so we're not going to do like question and answer and the banter and the talk back and forth and a discussion type of show. I want you just to open and say, this is Sheldon Neidl, do a quick biography on me, and then turn it over to me, and then I'll do the entire show, and then you'll come on at the very end and you'll close. I said, you know what, Sheldon, it's your show. Let's do it that way. I thought it was great for me because I thought I'm off the hook. I don't have to, you know, worry about questions or being too engaged. I can just sit back and, you know, I don't know what he's going to say, but he's going to say something. And so, you know, the camera guy looks at us, and I see the 2, 3, 1, and the light goes on, and he points to me, and I say, good evening, and welcome to Technology and Trends, or whatever the show was at the time. There was 2 of them. Anyway, and tonight our guest is Sheldon Neidl. And so then I bring him on, and he's talking, and as I'm sitting sitting just outside the camera view, and the camera's on him, the strangest thing started happening. I noticed that he's sort of reading something. It's almost like he's giving a dissertation. He's not like just coming up with this out of his head. It sounds more like an address, like he's reading something. And I thought, that's weird. You know, he sounds different. It's like he's reading something. And then all of a sudden, a woman, I know this sounds crazy, but,
okay,
you know, a woman starts speaking in my head without my thoughts. Now, we all think in our own mind's thoughts, right? So right. You know your own mind's voice, and you ask yourself a question, and you give yourself an answer, and you reason. You use your reasoning mind and things like that to analyze something. But imagine, for you, Janet, all of a sudden a man coming in your mind's voice and saying, listen, Janet, can I answer that here for a second? All of a sudden that's very disconcerting because you feel like you're splitting down the middle and like, what? What is that? Where is that coming from, you know? And so I realized that this was happening while Sheldon was giving this address, right?
Right.
And I sat back with my eyes crossed, like, wow, what? And then after it was over, he points to me and he's done, and I'm just staring ahead, you know, like stunned. And the camera guy is motioning to me, it's you. I go, what? Oh, yes, and thank you for coming tonight. It was wonderful. What a wonderful show and everything. I was stunned. I was flabbergasted. I was like, what? And tune in next week. He said, we're not on next week. We're on once a month. I mean, tune on once a month, and we'll be back. You know? And all of a sudden he goes, cut, we're done. Go to credits. And I'm like, look at Sheldon. I think, Sheldon, what just happened? What was that? He goes, what do you mean? I go, well, while you're doing this dissertation, it sounds like you're reading something. There's a woman talking in my head. And he goes, oh, yeah. Or no, I said, there was someone talking in my head. And he said, was it a woman? I said, yeah, it was a woman, as a matter of fact. He said, oh, yeah, that's Commander so-and-so. And she's from the Galactic Federation. And I'm like, excuse me? She goes, yeah, she's like a Syrian cosmonaut of some kind, you know? And then she was having me read something. So I was reading a teleprompter, but you can't see that teleprompter, only I can see it. And that explained how he was reading it, because he can see some kind of teleprompter. And I'm hearing this woman's voice in my head. Wow, we're living in a mighty wonderful world, huh?
So the voice was saying the same things that he was saying, or
what was she saying?
I would hear her like reminding him, don't forget to say this, and say this, and then he would say it, you know, something about like, you know, he talked in terms of like treaties and agreements and things like that, and I know Sheldon is an anomaly, you know, I don't know that everything that he said is, I think a large amount of what he says is coming true and will come true, but it, you know, we're in a free will zone, so everything's being altered by moment, so, you know, when you stick your neck out with a prediction or an absolute, you know, you should be really careful because, you know, everything around us is in motion and changing, and it may happen and then it may be called off. You know, that's why I don't like the prediction business, you know, because they'll hold you to it. Wait a minute, you said. You
said, Sheldon, that Nassar was going to happen next week, and it didn't happen.
But one of the things that happens, though, is when prophecy fails, Fessinger did these studies, you cling to the belief even more strongly. If you don't discard it, then you're even more sure of yourself, like cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Wow. So, anyway, what did you learn from that?
Well, that was an introduction.
Stick with you?
Yeah, what I learned was it was just confirmation that these entities are all around us. Okay, you have apparitions, and then you have people that are members of the so-called Galactic Federation that are sometimes speak directly through people, you know, and then you have, you know, of them appear in different forms. You know, one day, say another wild story. If you want a wild story, then we'll go to like serious questions,
yeah, we like
right?
Stories,
so the first half is kind of like, you know, okay, all the really corny fun stuff, and the second half will be more meat and substantive stuff or whatever that applies to people instead of Robert's wild times or whatever. That.
You were being serious. At least your communicant was from Sirius.
Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, it's a play on Sirius.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. So one day I'm sitting there taking a cat nap. This is in the period I'm hanging out with Sheldon, right? And I'm lying on the couch, and I was taking a cat nap, very relaxed. And when we lay down to do a meditation, or sit up to do a meditation, or take just a simple little 20-minute power nap, it's very good for the body because it allows everything to come down and rest, shut the mind off. I'm a big proponent of meditation. And that gives the ajna center, or the third eye, sometimes once in a while it has a tendency to open and peek out and see some other things that are beyond the material plane that's from visible sight. And sometimes it happens easy for people, and sometimes it happens almost by random. They don't understand why suddenly they saw something. And largely it's the pineal gland opened up for some reason, and then they see something. And what I saw when I woke up, I started to open one eye. I looked down, and there was what looked like it. I know this sounds funny, but it looked like a little chipmunk man. It was dressed in a flight uniform of some kind, and it had a chipmunk's face, and it was dressed in a little uniform, and he stood only about 8 inches, maybe 7 inches tall. And when you see something like that, it's very disconcerting because you're like, oh, you know, it really is enough to send you into a spin. And I called Sheldon, and I said, Sheldon, I had something appear to me in the room. And before I finished what I was even saying, he says, would this little thing that you saw, would this look kind of like a chipmunk? And does it wear a uniform? And I go, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you seen it? He goes, yeah, that's Commander Washta. I said, excuse me? Commander what? He said, that's Commander Washta. I said, oh, no, please, I beg you, please don't do this. I'm having a meltdown. There's no Commander Washtas out there. You know, he goes, yeah, no. He appears once in a while in humor. He humors you, and he appears like a chipmunk. It's easier for you. If he appeared to you as he really is, it would be very disconcerting and a very bad experience. So he's going to appear to you in a form that is pleasant for you. You know, almost humorous. You know.
Oh, uh-huh.
So that's.
I've heard that before. They don't appear in something that would be threatening. They appear, you know, they can manifest however they want. So they appear in a way that you're going to accept them. So you're not going to run and have a heart attack.
Yeah. Amazing, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to the dead people. So did you get an idea? This is still going on for you. You see dead people?
Yeah.
Discardants?
Yeah.
I just saw David Bowie this year and Prince. They both came to me, and I used to just shut it all off. I said, no, none of you guys can come to me. Because in 2009, Michael Jackson came to me, and it was like 2 months I worked with Michael Jackson. He was all upset. And then I said, nope, not doing that anymore. It's too hard on me. But this year, you know, 2016 has been a very strange year. So there's David Bowie, and I just said, okay, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to just let him come to me. And it's interesting that you like the Beatles because one of my favorites was John Lennon. So he brings John, he brings George, he brought Leonard Nimoy. It was almost a year to his death, and several others. They brought my mother and father and Sasha's mother and father, and he kept bringing all these people in front of me. You know, like we're alive, we're not dead. Here we are. And it was very interesting. So then I said, okay, nothing happened. Because I used to get haunted by the dead, and they wouldn't go away. And I ended up doing therapy with them. And then I'd be exhausted. I said, I have to, you know, have my own life and not be up all night working with the dead. So so then when Prince came, he really was excited about being dead, he said. And he kind of merged with me like a mind meld, and he said, this is the state that we're in, and it's like a total high blissed out state, like you know, I don't know, like you just took some kind of bliss pill. And I woke up and it didn't last, but he showed me, and that's what they come to me. They come when I'm relaxed and I'm in kind of like a either half awake state or the dream state, and then you know, the message sticks with me. So you don't forget like a normal dream. You forget your dreams. It's like it sticks with you. So. Anyway, so you're still having contact. Do you ever get anybody in particular that comes to you, like your parents that are dead or something? Or?
Yeah, once in a while, you know, my parents, but that's only periodical. I think that for the most part, I think there's sort of some unwritten law that says, you know, they are to influence us, but not to interfere too much directly. And we can call on them, but we can't necessarily, you know, have always direct contact. One of the great films in our time, I think, that depicted this it's a wonderful film that was released in 1989, produced and directed by Steven Spielberg. It's a film called Always with Richard Dreyfuss. Do you remember this film?
Okay.
So this is a beautiful love story where Richard Dreyfuss is a pilot who puts out forest fires, and then he tries to help his friend in a rescue attempt and ends up crashing himself. And then the transition from life to death is met when he is walking through the forest, just whistling and just walking and looking around at the forest, and has no idea that anything's even happened. And then suddenly he sees Audrey Hepburn that's waiting up on this sort of little grassy small hill with a beautiful tree that's in full bloom amongst a forest that's completely burned down. But the only thing that is living is this little grassy, little tiny mound with a beautiful tree that's blossoming. And she's standing right there, and she says, "Hello, Pete." And he goes, "Hi." And he sits down, and they have this conversation, and it's just the transition is so slight. The director wanted to be able to put in something that would be sort of that we wouldn't expect. And so suddenly he's just getting his hair cut in the forest and everything. And she brings up the plane crash, and he brings it up too. He goes, yeah, that was really something and everything. And then it suddenly occurs to him, he goes, how did I get out of that one? And she said, you didn't. And there's a long silence, and he's staring forward. And the idea that he didn't is starting to occur to him, because the transition from the physical form dying to the next level sometimes is much like our dream state when we fall asleep or when we're waking up. The transition is so slight that we don't really know even which side we're on, because it's all part of the same, you know. And
right.
And so he turns around and he said, are you trying to tell me that I died? And she said, yes, I'm afraid so. And she was just very casual about it. And the look on his face in this film is priceless, because when we die, many people don't know that they've died. They don't.
Yes.
I always go on that all of the above is true. For some religious people, yes, they will go through a tunnel, and yes, they will meet Jesus Christ. Yes, this is very real. For some, they will be met by angelics. For some, they will walk out of their body and be walking down the street and wonder why no one can hear them. What's going on here? And they'll feel so much better. Like you said, they'll feel a sense of well-being, because all the density and the hurt and the pain and the aches and all that comes because we're wearing a physical form. Once that's removed, you're kind of in your natural state, and there's sort of a loftiness that comes along with it, because it doesn't have decayed cells, because there's no cells to decay anymore. You're just spirit, you know?
Right.
So that hopefully answers some people's questions. So you will all these people wondering which one is it? I said it's kind of individuals, a little bit of all of them, really. Mm-hmm. And the best part is that when we when we die, we go back to our natural state, which is I believe we live on the other side most of the time. And we come here as an adjunct to our spiritual studies for an intern time to learn the mastery of these various programs and speed the process up along, where eventually we won't have to necessarily incarnate quite like this, with this sort of messiness around us. And so people are coming in, right. The millennials are coming in that are very advanced, and there's things going on, everything from levitation to knowing that there's a hierarchy, and then there's, people that have already been here living a long time that deny everything I just told you.
I have a question about number 2 that you sent us. You said that everyone is actually walking with a committee that functions as a support team. Mm-hmm. And how does that work?
Well, that committee is coming in different forms. First, there's the angelics, and they're sort of over the whole thing. This is just my version from what I've seen of all the studies for years and years and years. And I think anybody that tries to tell you exactly is probably not going to be. There is no exact. But the angelics, the seraphim, the cherubim, the B'nai Elohim, the ones that even the scriptures or the Gita mentions it in the Torah, the Bible. This hierarchy is a non-entity or non-physical entity that doesn't even have a form quite like us, and understands to a great degree, and sort of a directive force that encourages us, guardian angels. And then there's the extraterrestrials, and they're sort of underneath, and they're curious about how the DNA played out here. They have a big stake in this. That's why we're all going to contact in the desert. There's a lot of people that I think there's only maybe I would estimate that there'd be only maybe 3% of people that are coming to something like an event like that would be questioning whether UFOs are real, and I would be venture to guess it's probably about 97% see this as a pilgrimage of like-minded people that are wondering what's in it for them. Why us? And are discussing deeper things about the DNA. And so these ETs come in the form of Pleiadians, and it's even stated in the books of Job, you are descendants of the house of Pleiades, and the house of Sirius, and the house of Orion. And And so we have this.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, we have these entities sort of watching over things, and the ships that we see in the sky have a kind of a protocol of non-interference, and that's why we only see, like, faint little photographs and hints. It's enough to get you used to the idea, but no attempted landing in a major metropolitan area, because they know the consciousness can't rise quick enough to meet that, and it would cause a collapse of the civilization. People go into fear and then become disorderly, and social unrest happens, and then they pull their money out of the markets, and then it affects our medium of exchange, and then theft happens, because they think if a major ship landed, say, in a major metropolitan area, in front of everybody to see, people will think this is some kind of predecessor to an invasion, perhaps, and they'll read all kinds. So that's why the hands off and the photographs remain kind of funky and blurry and of mythological nature, and that is changing, by the way, too. It's sort of coming in more and more. You'll notice on Facebook and other websites. So now we're getting to the point where, okay, it's a bit of a standoff, isn't it? Like, they know all about us, and we're just dangerous enough to ruin the plane with a nuclear thing, that would wreck the platform for the incoming karmic-bound souls that are due to come in here. So it screws up their plan and the DNA and the incoming karmic-bound that need to come in here. So now, when the Bible talks about the great time of upheaval, and just at the point of complete upheaval where the world looks like it will end, there will be an intervention of some kind, and the Christians call this the rapture, and we call this the ascension. We're all basically calling the same thing. There's probably going to be some kind of intervention very soon now, and that's what you teach on your show.
Yes, that's why we talk to people like you. Sasha has a...
Well, I'd like to just relate some of the information that John Lath has given us, and he's got contacts at the highest level of government, that Roosevelt had been actually met by a Venusian who came right into his space, and he was insisting the public should know about this, and the people that were in charge of keeping everything secret, the intelligence things, made a whole casting deal. They finally they wanted to get somebody that could really do a dramatization of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, and they chose Orson Welles. And the whole idea was to impress Roosevelt about how terrible it would be if disclosure happened. And so, people, there were 8 people that died, and freeways were jammed, and all kinds of things happened as a result of this dramatization. It didn't say it was a dramatization throughout. And so Roosevelt said, I see, you're right. We got to keep this secret from the people. I just thought that was an interesting bit of information. But that was a direct attempt of the Venusians to get the American president to try to speak up, and he was talked out of it. He was manipulated out of it.
Yeah. They've always tried to get them to sort of own up to a degree. There's that aspect. I think that's the reason that President Obama doesn't say anything about it, or the incoming, however bizarre they may be, to be the president in the next election. I have to say that, don't I? Can you believe that it's come to this? Yeah, we have to say the obvious. It's really, really quite incredible. I'm personally a Bernie Sanders kind of guy, but that said, the reason the president can't say anything really is that he's in the business of national security, not the business of national insecurity. There's a difference. Right. And so yeah. So Sasha's very correct. Correct there, right? You got your finger right on the button there.
So you're saying that I forgot all what you said. It was great. And Hillary's talking about, I'm going to get behind Area 51 and Roswell. 10 years ago they wouldn't even admit those things existed. So we are having some kind of soft disclosure. So I think it was one of your questions. What do you think's going on around disclosure and
well,
contact.
I think you're part of disclosure.
Well, you're part of disclosure,
obviously.
Actually. All the experiencers coming out, and there's a need to tell right now. So you have your story, but all these people need somewhere to voice their experiences. Some of them anonymous. They might need to wear a mask or something, but other people are like, hey, I'm going to tell my story. I interview like 2 or 3 new experiencers every week. It's just phenomenal.
Wow.
So what are your thoughts on all that? It's there's something happening.
It's a movement of disclosure from the bottom.
Right, the movement, the disclosure is coming from the people. We, the people, are speaking up.
Disclosure is coming in so many forms, isn't it? I mean, I do my part. I'm doing it right now. And I do it day by day. I have a sign that I hang up in my that I show, and you'll see it at Contact in the Desert. I drag a little sign around me, and I start out with my presentations whether I'm speaking or playing music. This is the whole music thing that I do, and touring and all that. And on the sign it says, "Create a moment for someone." And people will say, "What is that? What does that mean? What do you mean create a moment for someone?" I said, we only have this moment that we're in now. Try to live in just this moment and try to create a moment for someone else. Everybody's carrying a large amount of trauma, abuse, narcissism, dependency. They don't feel validated or made to feel significant or approved of, and they're carrying a lot of stuff. Try to be a conscious way shower and create a moment for someone. So that's sort of my job. When it comes to disclosure, a lot of people are doing it. Hollywood is doing it inadvertently without even realizing it. They're putting a dark spin on it, and they're not even realizing it. You get the better guys. I just had a nice, lovely talk with Dr. Stephen Greer when I was at New Living Expo, and we got into a lovely conversation, and I saw his presentation there, and I think in a lot of ways he's had his finger on the button of disclosure as far as interaction with the government, along with Stephen Bassett. And there's guys that take more of the governmental approach to say, come on, own up and everything. I'm a volunteer with Daniel Sheehan's office here in Santa Cruz, California, where he's a constitutional lawyer that handled the Iran-Contra affair, and with Oliver North, he handled the Pentagon Papers, and he's handled he was the famed winner of the $10 million in the Karen Silkwood case for Miss Silkwood in 1979, and now he does lectures. He'll be at Contact in the Desert, and so he's doing his part in disclosure. You guys are doing your part. I'm doing my version, and all the rest. And like David Icke is coming out doing his version. As people get it from radio and books and TV and mentions and things like that, disclosure sort of comes at you in 1,400 different angles, where people sort of say, all right, I guess I'm ready to sort of go along with this. I guess there's enough of this now. You just need more time on the planet, right?
Right. Well, that's part of disclosure, too, because there are cures for all these diseases, including the disease of aging, that will come about when these things are released, when we finally start, I'm an experiencer. I've been there. They don't die at between 50 and 100 like we do. They don't. And that's our birthright.
When you on your radio show, do you talk about meeting these prominent people on the planet a lot, and why they come to you and how they come to you? I would like to hear that myself. Now that I'm on the show, I'd like to hear your version.
So the prominent people you're talking about, David Bowie and
like how did David Bowie appear to you? How did David Bowie come into this?
They start by singing their songs in my head. And they haunt me. That's what Michael Jackson did. I said, honey, I'm being haunted by Michael Jackson. Will you please help me? Because they won't shut up. So I'm sleeping, I get up, I go pee, and their songs are going in my head. So we do a session where explain that. They allow them to speak through me without taking me over.
Yeah, to use your vocal apparatus without taking over your consciousness, as you can be totally present.
So when Michael Jackson came through, I was lying down. I was instantly folded upright and my head forward and just sobbing for hours.
Wow.
So he just came through because he was so distraught about being dead, and Farrah was with him. Now, I had never done that before. I don't go through life saying I'm a channel. But the information that was coming out of him was way beyond. I mean, I'm not a little rock star fan, of anybody. I was a Beatle fan, back in the 60s, and I kind of outgrew up and got married young and wasn't really like a fan type person, right? So all this stuff was coming through. So what he said to me is that we're over here in this dead zone, and there are a lot of us that don't know we're dead, and we need to have therapists to work through our issues, because if we could go on and become conscious and aware of, and integrate our lives that we just lived. And there's a place where they go, according to the Dr. Michael Newton Institute's research, where they have their committee, their guides. They work with an ongoing kind of support group, lifetime after lifetime. They integrate all the experiences they just had and how they correlate with the, we have hundreds of lifetimes. So each time you have a lifetime, there are certain issues and items that you're kind of working out with the people that you incarnate with, and karma, and, how did you do this time? What could you do better? That type of thing. So anyway, that's what once they get to that phase, then they can kind of decide, am I going on to the next realm, or am I coming back to have another lifetime here? So it's a whole process. And of course, we're talking about time, and it's not that, you were talking about that we have multi-dimensional simultaneous experiences. That's more true. We are extraterrestrial. It's more likely that we are, once you start getting to that level of identifying who you are as an eternal being, as a soul, you realize that, oh yeah, I simultaneously exist, and I am a Pleiadian, and I'm an Anunnaki, and I'm a human, and I'm a male, and I'm a female, and I'm, all the different variations of how we relate to each other. These are simultaneously happening because time is an illusion of this reality. It's not
right.
Yeah. So what they said to me is, I said, why are you coming to me? And they said, well, over here, it's when you're out of the body and it's kind of new, and you're integrating your experience, it's kind of dark and murky and shadowy, and you're trying to make sense of it. And they said that they saw me, and I appeared like a star in the distance, and then they came over to me, and as they came close, they realized it was a person, and that I was able to see them. They saw me, that I was seeing them, and vice versa. I suspect that's what happened to you. They knew that you could see them. So you were probably appeared to them like a bright light, and they go to you.
Well,
and then
you're open to it at least.
So, but your apparitions took you to more than just your welfare. It took you to a teaching for all humanity.
Well, I'm glad that whoever they and whatever they are, have elected to be, there. I don't. I think I'm honored. I'm humbled by it, probably more than anything else. I think humility is probably a huge, gigantic portion of our experience here. I don't consider myself above or necessarily below. I'm just sort of a guy sharing some important anecdotes for living. I spent a lot of time with Tony Robbins. You mentioned him earlier. Tony, a wonderful coach, and I always suggest to people, if you're not getting the results you want, find a great coach. Find somebody that's doing it better than you are. And in the particular area that you're hurting, if it's trauma, these recovery groups, are very important. If it's, narcissism, find somebody for that or whatever. But, David Icahn was talking on, he was on, I think, Jimmy Church here a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about, the different kinds of people that are here. And two specific kinds are, one, there are passengers, and these people are the ones who sort of watch life go by haven't hooked into the fact that they're here on a mission, haven't hooked into the fact that each day is presenting a set of new equations that they really would benefit from figuring out, and challenges, and really working on themselves, and then also helping those around them. The passengers are watching life go by as if hypnotized by television and socio-conditioning. And then the others are sort of, those are the awakened, and those are the ones that are saying, I want to be awakened, I want to be more awakened, I'm here on a purpose and a mission, and I'm embracing my divinity, and I'm understanding my mortality to a large degree, and I'm here, to be a part of the solution. And so at the end of the day, when your life is over, will you say that your life was better, was the world a better place for you being in it? And where will you stand? And many times, death is nothing more than the time clock has run out, and that the time is up, and it's time to return. And for some, it seems very premature, and for others, it seems quite timely, in fact, welcomed, and everything in between. Mm-hmm. But sooner or later, that time clock ticks at midnight, and it's time for us to return. I just want to return with like a great story, a great record of achievement, and be there to say, I was there when that happened. I'm thrilled that I was born in 1955. Isn't it great that we were born in the mid-50s? We can say we were there when the first man walked on the moon. We were there when we saw, the Kennedy administration. We were there when we saw the invention of the computer, the satellite, the home-based computer, the internet, the first arrival of those from other dimensions. I mean, this is the most magical time to live in. Wow. What a wonderful thing.
It is. I say that I actually came in 2 years earlier. My mother miscarried me, or, that was very questionable what happened, right? And I came in 2 years later. It's like, I have to be here, and I know I had to be here for this time. We're our front row, center seat for the greatest show ever in the entire continuum, the whole entire universe. And I knew I had to meet this man, Dr. Lesson, and if I would have come much later, it'd been ridiculous because he's 14 years older than I am, so it's just right. And so on and so forth. So I think that's all the best we could do. Was my life meaningful? Did I make a positive effect on the planet? And, I know that children are alive because I did therapy with their parents, and they wouldn't exist if I hadn't helped them work out, those difficulties. And there's all these, you get your, It's a Wonderful Life feedback, right? Haven't you had those things where, wow, that's something I did. If that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be where we are. So, it's that butterfly effect. Each of us has that effect on the continuum. We're all important. And like you said, it's humbling. It's humbling. I feel so honored to have been working with extraterrestrials and interdimensionals and discarnates. I'm so fortunate. I feel like Forrest Gump. My life is magical,
Sure.
Go ahead, Sash.
Well, I kind of embrace both pride and humility, and I'm not devoid of working hard and enjoying my accomplishments. And so for me, my model was my father, who was a real human being, and I learned to have compassion for people. And I've been blessed by a most abundant life in a beautiful place with an amazing wife, and I feel so much gratitude. I love to give back to the world.
What a wonderful thing! Now there is a love story.
Yes, we of all the 6.5 billion people, we found each other. It's like. That is amazing. How in the world? Well, I know I have angels, I have guides. It's orchestrated in some way, but it was designed by me before I came here. And
I think it's lovely.
Wow.
You guys are meant to be together. What a lovely, lovely thing. Are you guys going to be broadcasting it all from Contact, or you guys are attending, right?
We have a show. We have this show, which will be on that Sunday, so somehow I have to figure out where I can go to get a signal out to the world to broadcast our show. Yeah, so we are going to be broadcasting at least one show, but I think there's other radio shows that are going to be broadcasting. I was invited to go up, and I forget who it is. Somebody said, come up and be on our show. So they want people to stop by them. We'll meet for one of the meals or something, Robert, and we'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Where can we go to? I mean, like Lorian does at the conferences. She does these 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But I don't think Lorian's going to be able to broadcast either. They've got it all figured out. So do go over and add your 2 cents to this voice that goes out to the planet. Do you think we'll have contact in the desert this time?
Of course we will.
Yeah. I keep thinking, we weren't going to go. We didn't have the money, and I just said, we interviewed Seinfeld. What's his name? First name. Anyway. He said, you got to come. And then we talked to somebody, you got to come. And so finally I said, I think there's like 3 or 4 people who says, you guys have to come. And so
sure, why
we made
not?
it happen. We made it happen. We just, we talked to Victoria and we worked out some things. And
Alan.
Oh, Alan Steinfeld. Yeah, I love Alan. Anyway, so here we are.
He works with me, sure. Yeah, Alan's the coordinator for New York for David Icke. I picked Alan out because I was looking for somebody that had a deep sense of integrity and spirituality and honesty, and somebody with know-how to help produce, David in that market. So Alan and I have had wonderful conversations. He's a great guy.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to see David again. I'll have to try and figure that out.
He's pulled the mask off the Illuminati. You can see who's underneath the royals. It's wonderful. He's such a courageous guy, and he's saving the kids.
Right, and I had an awakening because of David's information. I had dealt with a reptilian being from age about 5 or 6 until I was 12, and it was like an ongoing, almost like a Groundhog Day experience where I felt like this being was trying to suck my soul out of my crown and third eye chakra, and I would be terrified. I'd run away. And so, and I kind of like said that couldn't have been real, and I dismissed it. Nobody else witnessed it with me. And then my 30th birthday, both my parents tried to die, and I finally had a conversation with my brother and sister. And they said, yes, they had encountered this being. But none of us described it as reptilian because its face was so out of the box that we blocked what the face was. But then finally everybody kept saying to me around 98, 99, go read David Icke's books. I'm like, who's David Icke? So I finally got one, and I opened up Children of the Matrix, and I got to the hooded being with and as soon as I looked at it was just a black and white, drawing, but as soon as I looked at that rendition, it's like this veil came down, and I saw the face, and I saw the reptilian looking at me, and I saw his eyes, and then I integrated that with, Dr. Lesson here is not only an anthropologist from UCLA, he's a psychotherapist, and so we integrated this experience, and then I began to realize, he was just trying to communicate with me telepathically, and they're a different vibratory frequency than the Greys and the other extraterrestrials. Their communication is very easy, but the reptilian, it's such a high frequency, it feels like you're going to die, and probably some people do die, but he was just trying to communicate with me. And so I realized that, we have a tendency to judge other people, other races, colors, creeds, and we judge extraterrestrials. And I realized, he was very kind and loving, and he was just trying to get to talk to me. So anyway, I have a whole thing that I have a book I have to write with my experiences, but it's so personal, and it is humbling to tell your story like you're doing. You have to be brave on so many levels, not only just about the potential criticism and shaming you get, but that you treat this information, which is sacred, in a very delicate way, to present it just right, so you represent this cosmos and how it really is. I don't know. I can't even put it in words, but I have a responsibility to tell the tale correctly and honor all these beings that have crossed my path, because on some level I was chosen to do this, but on another level I volunteered.
Oh, sure.
Just like you, Rob.
Oh, sure. You're taking your time and attention to build a radio platform like this. Yeah, I mean, you could be doing other things. See, we could be, baking cookies for all you know, or something, something more home-based or whatever. But to reach out to other people, you're taking a huge risk here But most of the people that are listening to... I block
all the negative comments. I just block it. I've developed a system. I block all the Facebook. I block everything negative. What I don't read doesn't affect me. And it really is creating a whole new paradigm by just blocking, because then those who really agree with, this new paradigm... I think that there are... all the potentials are available to us where we can go.
Yeah.
And so what serves all of it? Where's the win for all? So if somebody's putting negative energy into something and, shaming, blaming, criticizing, projecting, whatever, block. And this is growing. Sasha has something to say.
Well, if you look at it, if you expect terrible and negative things, you can bum yourself out now. But let's say that terrible and negative things are really coming down, but you've got a positive outlook. And so then, something terrible happens and you get killed. Well, at least you didn't waste your life worrying. But on the other hand, if nothing negative happens, you had a good time anyhow. So why worry?
Yeah, it's like the guy that died in the plane crash. It's like, oh, I'm dead? Okay.
Yeah. There's nothing to fear.
Amazing?
The big fear, I think, is how we die. I mean, I don't think I want to be in a bed for 3 years or whatever and dying slowly. And I think the ones that died fairly quickly, David Bowie certainly went out in the most interesting way, very quick, and he had control over a large amount of it. He had his will and trust and estate in place. He knew privately, only amongst him and his family, that the time was coming very quickly. He shot a video even days before he died. He did it his way. Prince, certainly probably might have been more of a surprise to Prince, going so suddenly like that, and not really realizing how diluted his physical form, really was,
Right.
But,
yeah.
I probably, all these people are teachers in one form or another, and they're coming in so many forms. Last night I met James McCartney. That's the son of Paul McCartney. I met James, lovely guy, played some music in San Francisco. People know I'm in the music business, and my album's Spectacular Red, and I'm going out on tour and a little British thing in the fall and all this stuff. But, he's a lovely guy. His dad was a huge influence on me, when I was young, because the whole flower power movement was really this explosion of consciousness, of mudras, and mantras, and metaphysics, and mysticism, and meditation, and Maharishi, and all of this stuff. When I was 12, I was hooked. And that whole explosion in, I would say, the summer of 66, and then all the way into the end of 67, and certainly peaking in the summer of 67, that explosion of this thought and colors and mudras and mysticism and everything it grew into today into what you call the so-called New Age movement. It just moved on into, it never stopped. The hippies became sort of, inquisitive as to, okay, now we've tried ayahuasca, now we've tried drugs and LSD, but now we want more, and what's next? And they started exploring vast other vistas of consciousness, and you can see the Drunvelos and the Greg Bradens and the Hurtaks and all these people out there talking about stuff that was really coming into realization in the 60s. So good on them for doing it. Good on you for doing it too, because it allows people to say, yeah, okay, I see what you're talking about,
Right. What do you want to say, sir?
Oh, I just, people, there's been so much of an emphasis on extraterrestrials or interdimensionals, but there's been a huge cover-up of the actual explorations of the inner world, from Admiral Byrd's travels in the North Pole to the discovery that the Nazis had joined with other ancient civilizations in Agartha under the earth, and that this is this disclosure. I know that Steve Bassett and those guys want to keep it to nuts and bolts craft, but there's so much more. And once we start really looking at the possibilities and listening to people, not dismissing at things they say because they symbol them differently, but just listening. Remember, reality is an elephant. We grab it by all its different parts, but every story, even the disinformation stories, have something to say about what they're trying to cover up. It's all there.
Well, also, we're talking about the hippies and people taking entheogens, and Sasha was a good friend of Terrence McKenna. I didn't get to meet him, but Sasha had him over to the house. We have all these people that come to this house because we're here in Maui. But so John Mack was studying with Stan Groff and Sasha, Dr. Lesson, all through the 80s and 90s, and they were talking about what kind of beings are they encountering when they're in non-ordinary states. And that's what happened with the Beatles. They went over to the Maharishi, and they were experimenting with primarily LSD and entheogen, not the other categories, but these are, and theo are towards the light. And so when they were doing these experiments, they were encountering interdimensionals, and what happens when you die? We become an interdimensional being. So there's a strong correlation between that, and of course the extraterrestrials will take us somehow through the walls, like you had the walls dissolving in your house when you had your experience in 1977. So all these things are connected, and that's what they're doing at FREE. They're finding the new Edgar Mitchell organization, which is around the experiencers, is that you can't overlook astral projection and near-death experiences and all these things. You have to take the whole field as into consideration to get the picture of what's really going on with our reality. And I know one of your questions was that. What do you think's going on? What is this thing that we're doing called life and reality of the cosmos and the universe? What do you think?
The process. The process. Well, I think we're feeding into the universe, and the universe is feeding into us. The incoming karmic down souls that are due here have to have some kind of platform to incarnate in, and a lot of families are seeking resolve. Now, when someone dies, and they're cut off from communication from that person, because if you're listening to this program and you have a lost loved one who's passed on to another world, the other side, let me tell you that you will see them again, and they will keep actually appearing to you periodically, sometimes as a discarnate and inspiring you and visiting you, and then when you die, you go meet them, and then maybe they will incarnate before you in a different family as a friend or a loved one or someone. That's why when we have the laws of attraction, when you see somebody that extraordinarily attracted to you, you don't even know where it's even coming from. You probably already have a deep experience there that's just being reawakened, right? So we're in the process of evolution and meeting up with everyone that's gone before us, and then preparing the way for all those that are coming in to meet us. Short version.
Short version.
Short version, right, Sasha?
Right.
Jen?
Yeah, I love what you're saying. It's interesting from the perspective of anthropology, is that people in every culture who reflect wind up getting the same holarchy of hierarchies, as Wilbur calls it, that at each level of consciousness there's a kind of Oedipus complex where you're just going to stay at that level. I'm an individual. No, I'm a couple. No, I'm a part of a family. I'm part of a nation. I'm part of this planet and this society and so forth. All the way up to source, and they realize that the lesser levels, the more material levels, are included as parts of more inclusive levels, but they don't obliterate the lesser levels. I guess like Prabhupada said, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, I salute the creator of all and the levels of the creation. And it's all there for our enjoyment, Lila, divine play, so to speak.
Sure. Absolutely. It's a marvelous world that we're living in.
It is.
we are very fortunate to have each other.
We are blessed. We have 3 minutes, and what is the most important thing you want to tell our listeners in the last 3 minutes of our show?
Well, I have some funny sayings. One is,
okay.
Not so funny, love yourselves more deeply, you'll get better results. Stop fussing and fighting, start paying attention. Find somebody today and create a moment for them. Call up somebody you haven't seen in a long time, that you have these incredible memories, and maybe for some reason you just lost touch with them. You don't even know why. We all have that. We all have, like, whatever happened to so-and-so? We just sort of lose touch. People get married, divorced, move on, move out of state or whatever. Call them up out of the blue and just say, you know what, or email them. I was thinking about you, and I just want to let you know I haven't forgot those great times that we had, and they were an intrinsic part of who I am today, and I'm really happy that I had that because you were there, and you made the difference for me. And watch their face or watch their reply. What a wonderful thing to reconnect with that, because there's no reason to really lose touch. We do lose touch and everything, but there's no reason to really lose touch. And then beyond that, I always end my lectures with, okay, everybody, put on your capes. We've got a world to save.
We do. We do.
Put your capes back on. We've got a world to save.
Yeah, my presentation is the hero's journey, and how that we are all the hero and the hero's journey. That on some, we're like a giant puzzle, and without one of us, it's like a gaping hole. We're all important.
Yeah, so much. I was very honored to be on your show tonight. I think it was very lively, engaging, and I love conversations like this. I saw your website. My goodness, how detailed you are. My goodness, it's such a lovely, all of my bio pictures, different things, questions, and that's for everyone else, too, that are coming on. And I saw your other guests coming on, like Nick Pope and stuff like that. And I thought, wow, you guys are very thorough. What a wonderful program, wonderful website. So I just want to tell everybody, go to Aquarius Radio. This is good stuff,
Yeah, and we also have Enki Speaks. I don't know if you know that we're Anunnaki researchers. We study Visitations, and so check out EnkiSpeaks.com. And your websites are, before the music comes on, what are yours? All yours, quickly. What's your websites, Robert?
Oh, my websites are robert-perala.com, theperala-report.com, and spectacularred.com.
Well, thank you so much, Robert.
Yes.
Lots of love, Sasha. Lots of love, Janet. Thank you. Talk soon.
Lots of love to you. Aloha, everybody.
Bye-bye now. Bye.
Bye.